Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video, I'm going to be giving you my first impressions on Cosmic Exploration. This content was just added in patch 7.21, and it's large-scale content for Disciples of Hand and Land, crafters and gatherers, if you will. It's most closely related to Ishgard Restoration in that each individual server is coming to a zone and working together to build something up. In this case, we're building up a base on the moon so that we can go to other planets in subsequent patches and craft and gather there to build up bases in those other locations and learn about the various locale. I'm not really a crafter or a gatherer, so I jumped into this content kind of with really low expectations. You know, I just figured that at the very least it wouldn't be for me. Ishgard wasn't for me, and I know a lot of people loved it. And so I kind of expected this to be the same, but I will say I've been pleasantly surprised with how much I've been enjoying it. It's not without its faults, but that's what we're going to be talking about in this video. I'm going to be sharing with you my impressions of the content, what I like, what I don't like, and maybe a few things of what I hope to see in the future, but we'll largely be focusing on what we have in front of us right now. So first, in order to unlock Cosmic Exploration, you need to go to Old Charlian, and down by the docks, you'll be able to accept the quest. Now, one thing I noticed immediately is the reinforcement that nobody reads, because I had so many people asking me, where does it unlock? I left. How do I go back? What do these NPCs do? The game forces you to read all the details that you absolutely need to know. Now, I will say even that's not perfect, but at the very least, the bare minimum of what you need to know, the game does put right in front of you. And I had a lot of people asking me, but you know what? That's why I do these videos, because I know a lot of you don't want to read, and a lot of you just want to listen, be told, whatever. So at this point, I've gotten used to it, but it just gave me a little bit of a chuckle right out of the gate. And after you go through a couple of quests, you end up on the moon, and you're pretty much thrown right into it. You're able to pick up your Cosmic tool at its most basic level, which is level 10, and you have to upgrade it through the various levels until it's completed all the way. It does get a special effect as it levels up that will increase the amount of currency that you earn while on the moon, and at the very least, my fishing relic, which I have completed, did have another bonus effect on top of that. I haven't looked at the other crafting and gathering relics, but I would assume they have their own various effects as well. So, what are you actually doing in this content? I said you are crafting and you are gathering. And while that's true, the game does make sure to give you a few varied objectives, and some of them are not even necessarily crafting or gathering related at all. They're really more like server-based team activities more than they are anything else. When you're placed on the moon, you're given access to these objectives called stellar missions. And these are just really, really short leave quests that you do with just a simple goal, like make, 4 of this item, and it needs to be, and you want it to be of a minimum quality, or go and find, 4 types of fish at a different fishing hole, or, mine however many different types of ores, or just get as many ores as you can. Effectively, you're just doing some form of really short-term crafting or gathering related activity, pretty much just like super fast leave quests more than anything else. And on the surface, that doesn't actually sound that interesting, because leave quests are like, they abandoned them for battle jobs ages ago. And crafting and gathering, they've been an option. Some people do them to get some gil, or maybe just to burn through their spares, or to level. Like, they're not useless, but they're not usually considered content, if you know what I mean. But by putting a lot of pressure on the player to operate in a really short period of time with maybe less familiar, like for crafting, less familiar durabilities versus like their quality options, not being able to gather materials in advance, not to mention the eventual use of expert recipes. For fishing, having to get certain fish within a really short time frame is a really scary thing. I did fishing first, and honestly, probably the hardest thing I could have chosen to do, because it was infuriating having to deal with fishing RNG while doing a lot of these missions. But like, yeah, you're just given this really short period of time, and then that gives you research points. And with the research points, you can upgrade your weapon. And as you upgrade the tool, I guess I should call it, it becomes a higher and higher level. And eventually it maxes out and you get all those bonus effects. And that actually helps you with your subsequent tools as well. I completed my first tool, and it boosted the rate of novice research points, which are the really, really low level ones that I got, by 50%. And I see that that bonus is going to continue to go up. So it's also kind of rewarding the idea of you being someone who does omni crafting / omni gathering, and expects that, if you are someone who wants to do all those completions, that you will probably do them. It incentivizes that in a lot of ways too, because it's also an excellent leveling method. I leveled from 90 to 100 in just a few hours in there, and it went really, really quick. I know other people have been taking their jobs from level 10 up at an incredibly fast pace, and that's another thing to mention. It's a leveling content on top of being this kind of, end game congregate of crafting and gathering related stuff as well. So it kind of just ticks all the boxes right out the gate. While you're out doing stellar missions, you can also have some other quests that pop up. Mech Ops can pop up where players can go to a location and use, I don't want to use the term gather. You use, they give you like a special hotbar with a tool, and then you use that tool to actually gather things around you. But 5 players also get selected to get into a mech as long as at least 5 players have tickets that they can apply to do it. And they run around and hit the larger objectives, and they're largely responsible for completing the objective in the really short time frame that you have. Completing the mech op in the mech gets you a whole bunch of bonuses. You can get a mount outright from it, which you can otherwise earn from the Gamba Fortune rolls that you can do back in the town, which I haven't even talked about yet. And if you're on the ground, it also gives you these like a boost for the next 20 stellar missions. So there's like a loop where you want to be going between a mech op and then trying to do your stellar missions, and then going back and doing a mech op to re-up the buff, and then going back and doing stellar missions, and going back and forth with all sorts of little micro objectives that you can work on, achievements you can work on, points that you can accumulate for your total contributions to the moon project. There's even these like special red alerts where the weather changes and you have to do like a rapid amount of crafting and gathering within like a 20-minute time frame, with massive rewards available for that, whether it's EXP, the credit currencies that you're getting, or the what's it called, the contribution rating, which you can just absolutely just blast during those missions. And then on top of that, each server works towards a larger objective. We are building up the base. So there's like a big bar that as servers are working on it right now, when it fills up, an objective pops up half an hour later, and everyone just has to do kind of a menial task for a while. And that's kind of the gist of what we're doing here. It's really, really simple stuff that you get to do around other players. And I think that's kind of the key thing that it's aiming to do, is it's aiming to be a social experience. They've also clearly learned a few things, because where we are actually doing all of these missions is not an instance area. You can use the duty finder here. You can use the party finder here. So it allows it to be a more actively social open world experience without locking you into a duty and giving you an instance timer and all that nonsense, which has been I'll be honest, not just a complaint about like Diadem, it's been a complaint about a lot of things Final Fantasy XIV does. And while I don't assume this will be a trend going forward, we obviously know that the next exploration content, the battle version of it, Occult Crescent, which is coming out in May, that has an instance timer. So I don't think they're doing away with that idea, but it's nice to see that they actively saw that piece of feedback and decided to incorporate it here, because it's just better if you're able to work on something that works for yourself and help the server and be around all these social activities, and also still be able to sit in PF and wait for the healers to join that never do, wipe 3 times, and then wait for a whole new PF. You want to be able to do that in a better environment, and this is that environment. So let's go through each feature, and I'll give kind of the ups and downs I feel of each of them. Starting with the stellar missions, I'd already kind of mentioned these are basically just like really fast leave quests. And I actually really like the short term, get this goal done, turn it in real quick, get your rewards. The pacing for it is very rapid, and it's a pacing that I don't generally associate with crafting and gathering, which to me is really more of a patient style of content, a more casual friendly. And putting that extra little like, nudge to get it done quickly is something that actually kind of excites me. I mean, of course, I know I'm an end game player. I'm always looking for that thing that kind of pushes me. And honestly, this kind of does that for me in a really subtle way that makes me enjoy it a little bit more. As someone who did fishing first, fishing was incredibly frustrating while doing stellar missions. And I'll say that that's for a number of reasons. I feel like a lot of my feedback is going to be because I did it as a fisher. And I think fishing is probably the worst of the jobs to like kind of experience this as on average. So let's go through a few important things. On crafting and gathering, which I have done, just straight up normal crafting and gathering, honestly, there's not really much to say. You have to learn how the recipes work on crafting. You have to, make sure you actually do the nodes and do what's asked of you. And it can get tough with the harder missions, but what's in front of you is really easy to understand. With fishing, there's no fishing log for the entirety of the place. It's not in the normal fishing log, and there's no in-game way to track any of the fish that you catch here. which means it's really hard to remember what fish belong to which fishing hole, and subsequently the conditions that we have to get them, meaning that player resources are going to be the way that this is done. Now, I'm not against that. Fishing has always been a player resource activity. Ocean fishing had its own separate like sheets and websites in order to keep track of everything. Big fishing has the entirety of like the Carby website. Like, it's always been that way. Day one, it was just a little bit weird to try to figure it out, but also a little exciting at the same time. It would just be nice if in game I had a way to at least refer to each fishing hole, even just to remind myself the fish that are there, because that's usually enough to trigger my memory of like what I actually need to do at any given fishing hole for any given mission. Now, that really doesn't help when it comes to some other things where there's just so much RNG that sometimes it feels impossible to complete a stellar mission as fishing. And that will extend to the Class A rank mission. So as you actually level your weapon and as you actually just complete objectives, the weapon and increasing your class for each individual job, two completely different things, but they kind of go hand in hand. When you get to the highest class missions, Class A missions, things get really tough for everybody. The crafting, the expert recipes are incredibly unforgiving. People are still working on macros for that now, and I'm sure that the autosolver website that most people use is going to be largely responsible for taking care of that. For fishing, it is just, it's just the strictest conditions possible on a, job that's really RNG. So it can be super frustrating to even complete a Class A mission, not to mention actually get the maximum rating on it to actually get the good rewards. And that does extend out to other jobs consequentially, because one really awesome thing they do with stellar missions is there's combo stellar missions where you might need like mining and goldsmith, where you have to mine the materials and then make the item within a time limit, or you have to fish up the fish in order to make a culinarian recipe or to make some sort of alchemical recipe. You might need to use ethereal reduction to get materials from like mining and botany, right? So like they're really making sure to use all these systems, and that's really awesome. I think they did a fantastic job with like actually, again, kind of supporting multi-crafting, multi-gathering, like people who actually play multiple jobs. Specifically with fishing though, I'd imagine anyone paired with fishing for the crafting recipes is having a miserable time for those joint missions, because there are some that are absolutely ridiculous of what they expect you to do in such an incredibly short time frame. So if you're really going for those Class A missions, expect to maybe yell at your monitor a little bit, but if you like a challenge, then it's probably up your alley. What was one other thing one other thing I wanted to say that with stellar missions is awesome. Nothing takes up inventory space. The only thing that's going to take up inventory space are your cordials and food, which, let's be honest, you should probably have both of them if you're gathering, as well as your actual relic tools themselves, your crafter and gatherer cosmic tools. But all the items, all the fish you catch, all the ore you mine, all the items you're asked to craft, you don't have to worry about any of that. It goes in its own separate pouch just for each individual stellar mission. It's not even like a generic pouch. Like, you can't gather or do anything for this that isn't through a stellar mission. So your inventory is never taken up. Now, on one side, thank goodness, Diadem gave me inventory heartburn. It was just a non-stop barrage of just way too many items to keep track of, and way too many items for me to even remotely care about. Here, I don't have to worry about that. My inventory is perfectly safe. I can just bring the things that I need and then do the stellar missions. On the other hand, I gotta say, it's a little bit like, I don't know, when you don't have any tangible item coming out of a craft, when you don't have any tangible item hitting your inventory from fishing up or from mining, a part of it kind of feels almost like, I don't know, do you know what I mean? Where it's like it's not tangible. It's like people who collect physical goods instead of digital goods, except obviously these are both digital, but it's like one of these items is just like imaginary and the other one, and like the more useful things actually go in your inventory. So there's that like slight feeling of like, am I actually doing anything? Because there's nothing coming out of it. And it's not like there's anything new to craft specifically from this location or anything new to gather, because everything is so self-isolated. So all your rewards come from the actual reward structure. It's, again, I think it's probably the better of two evils. If I had to pick, I'd rather all my inventory space be safe, but I almost wish the Cosmo pouch was like permanent in a sense, where it wasn't just like there until you finish the stellar mission and only stored that stellar mission's items. Because there's not even like item descriptions on any of the items. Diadem had hilarious item descriptions that everybody loved to share and talk about and discuss, and there are none here. Even if you reach into the Cosmo pouch, there's no descriptions on any of the items. So a little bit of flavor lost in that regard. One that has to be criticized, and one I don't think will change because I think generally they're focusing on the actual gameplay. But I want to call that out because that's definitely something that I felt like was missing. I definitely went, oh man, that's kind of lame when I actually saw it. Now, while stellar missions are like 90% of what you're going to be doing, they're not all you're going to be doing. You have to earn research points from those stellar missions to upgrade your cosmic tools, and the upgrade process is honestly pretty easy. I did the fishing one in less than a day, and like I mentioned, I mentioned earlier that if you have them completed, then your subsequent tools become easier, which I really do appreciate. However, I have to call out, that's good. It's a nice, simple system. It gives you a decent tool, it's still fine. And also you can use it while leveling if you really need to, because it levels up and then you're going to level up. And this is great leveling content, which also gets a plus. But I ran into a really nasty bug with this feature that I have to put in the video because it's first impressions. When I was progressing my goldsmithing tool, when I was going from stage 2 to 3, which is the level 30 tool, to the level 50 tool, it broke. And I can't get the tool upgraded. The tool's in my inventory. I have over the research points. The NPC has the exclamation mark over its head, and I just can't do it. It won't let me do it. I tried relogging. I tried doing another mission to see if upgrading my, increasing my points again would change it, but no, I just can't do it. So I hate to say, but bug, I mean, it's a pretty major bug. Like, it's not like the end of the world because I could just go work on another one until they fix it, but if you are someone who was like really committed to the idea of like, this is your main crafter, like the first one you want to do, and you're like sequential like me, the way of your thinking, it just kind of sucks. So not really a knock against the feature, but a really unfortunate first happening that, it kind of is now in the back of my head whenever I need to go do an upgrade and as I'm doing the upgrades for all the classes. But the tool system, functional, works fine, self-contained, easy to understand, no inventory woes, and yeah, I like it. Then you've got the Mech Ops. The Mech Ops can occur, I think there's like a window every 10 minutes that one can occur. I think it's like it's like every X7 minutes of the hour. So like, let's say it was 4 p.m. There's a chance one could spawn at 4:07, 4:17, 4:27. And I think there's like a minimum cooldown of 20 minutes or something like that. Maybe there isn't, but like I haven't like observed it closely enough or like looked at what other people have observed. So that was kind of my initial day one understanding of it. And the Mech Ops are, again, they're basic. They're a little bit of a break. I honestly prefer to do the stellar missions over the Mech Ops unless I get selected, but everyone always has a motivation to want to be doing at least the main Mech Op as the mech itself. Because if you spend 1,000 lunar credits, which is one of the currencies you get on a mech ticket, and then you get selected for the mech, then you can get a Gamba ticket for free. So it effectively gives you 1,000 lunar credits worth right there. But you can outright get like a mount, for example, from it, which you would otherwise have to Gamba for. And you also get more of the general credits that you're supposed to get as well. So it's really good in that front. But if you're not selected for the mech, the main reason you would do it is if you want to get the 20 stellar mission bonus. When you complete the mission, you get a bonus to your next 20 stellar missions. It's not that major of a bonus, but it is useful and will probably be what most people do. They'll probably just go to refresh it whenever it needs it, and otherwise maybe don't. And how often you need to refresh it depends on how, easy of a time you're having with your stellar missions, if you're having an easy time at all. So they're fine. The Mech Ops, there's only like 2 of them. They're definitely not like the highlight, but it's kind of cool to get in the mech and just like beat up a bunch of environmental stuff for a little bit of time, especially firing the giant laser. And, I like the bulldozer too, but firing a giant laser is always a good time. The red alerts, on the other hand, way more awesome because efficacy comes very much into play here. So you get 20 minutes when a red alert occurs to fill 2 different bars. There's like one that usually requires like 1 of 3 different jobs, and another one that requires 1 of 2 jobs. There's usually, maybe 1 or 2 gathering jobs. Most of the time at the minimum, there's 1. And then a bunch of the crafting jobs have their own separate objectives around the map. And you just have to go speed craft, speed gather, speed fish, which is, again, it's still RNG, less RNG, but still RNG for this. And I like that. I like that high intensity, watching everyone scramble around to do the missions. It's really fun with all the people around and everyone shout chatting and talking about the experiences. And honestly, early on, a lot of people are giving other people advice, you know, about what to do, like how to find the missions in the log. And that's really the one clunky thing about red alerts, I feel, is that you actually have to go into the log and accept a red alert mission, and you have to do that over and over again. There's no auto re-accept. There's no, like, you know, maybe you could just, yeah, I mean, there's just no auto re-accept. There's no, like, asking you if you want to do a different mission. You have to constantly open it up and go to the menu and click commence and all that. And it's just a little bit tedious and not entirely clear how it works, you know. And I'd say that might actually be a problem with stellar missions as a whole. Like for this one, for the red alerts, like, yeah, that's one thing here, but there's also like timed nodes and weather specific nodes, and you just kind of have to be conscious of that and checking your stellar missions to see what's available and if you want to go out of your way to do it. And there's also sequential missions that the game doesn't do a great job of educating you about. Like if you do like the first tier of a sequential mission, it procs the second tier sequential mission, which in some cases can then proc the third tier. And the game just isn't very good at alerting you to when you've activated a sequential mission. And that's something else that they could also do better. So I'd say, like, this is when you get into the really high level stuff is when you start to notice some of the issues with stellar missions, where you just have to make sure that you remember everything. And the sequential mission pop-up, the thing that says that they exist, it honestly is not like, it kind of pops up in the middle of like 5 other things. So it's really easy to miss. So that's definitely one thing. The missions are kind of tedious to go through with the stellar missions. There's no auto re-accept. There's no auto accept sequential. There's no indication for the sequential. And tracking the weather and timed ones is something you just have to be really responsible for. Now, I will say, this could maybe just be, I'm new to this system. You're new to the system. We're all new to it. And so maybe it's just not second nature to do those things yet. And at some point, regardless of whether or not it's tedious, it becomes really not as much a problem as it seems like in the early days. But I mean, auto re-accepting for Cosmic, for the red alerts, at least that seems like a minimum. I feel like that's a fair piece of feedback, or a quicker way to access doing the same one again, or even asking you if you want to do a different one. I don't know. I feel like there's ways to improve that experience. Then we come to the main building ops. Like whenever you fill the gauge for the infrastructure index and you get the massive mission where all of the instances work together. Mind you, even if there's like 5 instances open with a bunch of different people, all of them technically work together on the mission at the same time, which wasn't clear. I was worried about that doing it first. But all it is you basically run back and forth between like 1 of 2 interactable locations. And you do that for as long as it takes to finish. The mission itself starts 30 minutes after the alert is sent out. And in that time, you're supposed to tell your whole server, hey, this is going on. Everyone should come do this. Not what people end up doing, I will mind you. But usually there's more than enough people on most servers, depending on the time of day. And then you have 40 minutes to do the objective. Let me tell you, if your server is at any point of like a mid-population while this is going on, it is I'm not going to call it an agonizing experience, but the system both makes sense and doesn't make sense in this scenario. So you have 40 minutes to do it, and with, you know, like 400 or 500 people, something, I'd say like 300 or 400, it takes about half an hour to do out of the 40 minutes, which is nerve-wracking and not terribly interesting. It is a one-time event, mind you, for each individual infrastructure increase, but it takes like 30 minutes. And, yeah, it's just, it's kind of weird because you're like, why would they make this take this long? That's so weird. And if you're on a low pop server, you're going to fail it, and then your server is locked out of doing it for 8 more hours. So, that's a problem. Dynamis ran into that problem day 1 massively. But then again, if you're on a really high pop server, then it's done in 10 minutes. Like, the range is crazy. And the reason why it's a 40-minute event that takes a really long time is so that people feel like they can get to the event and participate in it. It's scaled with the idea that people will gradually show up as it's ongoing, or have the chance to show up as it's ongoing in some scenarios. But it's one of those situations where like they design it with a certain number of people in mind. They design it with like a good intention, but it's like while you're doing it, you're like, why is this way? You know what I mean? It's like, depending on when you get into it, it's hard to justify. And I feel like that feedback I'm getting, or that kind of feeling I'm getting, is because of what region I play in and when the content came out. So you got to remember that new content comes out at like, 2 to 3 a.m. Pacific. And we had our first event like an hour and a half later, and then we had our second event like 3 hours later. So we're talking about like 4 to 7 in the morning, depending on the coast that you're living on a work day for crafters and gatherer content. And so there's not that many people online. So it took us most of the time, even on Gilgamesh, to get it done. Meanwhile, EU and JP blasted through their missions because they're like midday, evening. So it was just kind of, I feel like part of the way I feel about that is because of the time of day. But it does also expose what it's like when it's like not hyperactive, And so I feel like that at least bears looking at, considering, maybe dynamically changing. Like, I think it's fair if they make it so that even if it was dynamic, it's scaled to, several more people than you currently have there. But I don't think they're going to end up doing that at all. I just wonder if it's going to change and what's going to change about it, because I just don't know what the proper perfect answer is. I don't think making it take like 5-6 minutes is a good idea when it only happens once per server per infrastructure index update. Like, it kind of being this long thing that can fail is not the worst thing. But it either feels like a rush and everyone's doing like a fantastic job and it just goes pretty quick, or it feels like dangerously slow to the point where you're kind of nervous the entire time. And I don't know if that range is like the ideal range that they were. But the experience, man, the EXP from this place, dude, 90 to 100 took me like, I don't know, doing it really slow on fishing. I think I did it slow. It took like 5 hours to do 90 to 100. Like, I could have done it faster, but like, I'm not an expert crafter or gatherer, you know what I mean? As for the rewards, obviously I mentioned the leveling, the tools themselves, but there's also a ton of rewards that you can get either from doing the Mech Ops. There's a few like dyes and glam pieces that you can get from the general Cosmo credits. And then with lunar credits or with the bonus ticket from the Mech Ops, you can also spin the Cosmo Fortunes. The Cosmo Fortunes have all kinds of things. They have a new emote. They have a new mount. I have another new glam there. They have the new metallic dyes, which for some people is going to be like the most major reward. They've got some new furnitures. They've got like, some junk rewards in there, like magic prisms and a few other things like that. It's a fine system. It works. I like it. I have terrible luck and I've won absolutely nothing of interest other than 4 metallic pink dyes, which Sophie's going to be getting and not me. I was like, let me see if I get those metallic pink dyes. I got those metallic pink dyes. There's more than a sufficient number of rewards that you can either keep for yourself or resell or whatever it is you plan on doing with them. But again, it's just kind of that, like, is that enough? Would it be better if there was something tangible to actually craft from this location? I think that honestly, it's mostly going to be done for achievement hunting or trying to gamba for these rewards yourself. There are a lot of achievements with a lot of different titles. There is a reskin of the mech mount that you can get for 500,000 contribution points across every crafter and gatherer, similar to the Pterodon mount from Diadem. Not as cool because it's just a reskin of the mount that we actually get from the Cosmo Fortunes, but still a decent thing to reach for. There's also titles that you can get from completing every stellar mission with gold for an individual class and across all of the classes. So there are like these objectives that people are definitely going to enjoy working on in the long run. And people who are going to be spending a gratuitous amount of hours working on it. Not to mention the star contributor thing, which is the replacement to Ishgard's Saint of the Firmament, where every other day somebody is named as a star contributor, and up to 7 people can be named at once. And that's like your moment of glory. It puts you, on display. You get the little indicator around you to let everyone know that you were the top in the last 24 hours. And I don't think there were any achievements associated with it either. I'd have to double check because I was just kind of congregating with my information from stream. But it's not something that like anyone has a reason to bot. And I think that's another thing here is that there's no real reason for anyone to bot this content other than Star Contributor. And if Star Contributor is largely something that you want to do or you enjoy doing, then so be it. But because you can't sell any of the items, and because there's so many little like menu things you have to do between the stellar missions and the potential for red alerts and all this other, like, there's a lot of onus on the player to really want to get Star Contributor at some point, and for it not to be ultra beneficial to a player to specifically go for Star Contributor. Do I think that makes sense? I think there should be a title for getting Star Contributor once, and maybe there is. Maybe I missed it and you guys are going to correct me in the comment section. Cool. That's totally awesome. But if there isn't, then I honestly think there probably should be. There should be an achievement for getting it a single time. We don't want an achievement for getting star contributor on every different class. We don't want it. We don't need an achievement for doing it 30 times. We don't need that. It's fine with just the one time, but like there should at least be one for the one. But yeah, overall, I've been really enjoying having this like really social zone with lots of players around doing these tasks together and running all around. It's just kind of fun to be in what feels like an MMO, which I know is crazy, but outside of hanging out in towns in Final Fantasy XIV, it's sometimes easy to forget that there's other players that are playing the game. It's always been something Final Fantasy XIV and generally hub/theme park style MMOs have struggled with. So it's nice to have features that kind of openly encourage that more social aspect of the game, reminding you of the genre that you're actually playing. It's definitely not without its faults. Again, I've mentioned a ton of things about the stellar missions, the bug that I had, and then there's other little things. Like I think a lot of people felt kind of weird having both permanent sprint but no mounts, and then having to unlock the Cosmo liners to get around, but the Cosmo liners only taking you like half the way to some of the missions. So especially as gatherers, it's very, very noticeable. And when you start doing the combo missions, which by the way are ultra rewarding in terms of lunar credits, so you're definitely going to be doing those if you're going for the 500,000 achievement. Yeah, I mean, they'll have to do it too, and they start doing the combo missions for the Class A missions. There's some genuine difficulty in here, both in the form of RNG and a little bit on top of just what's actually being asked of you. Cordials need to be just chugged non-stop as a gatherer, so there's always those as well, which is going to get me to start doing my custom deliveries again to make sure I have an infinite supply of cordials. I'm going to have to go rev up my island again to get more blue cowries so I get more high cordials, because this is getting scary. I'm burning through cordials like I'm I don't know. I have a coffee addiction, so I guess like I'm drinking my coffee. I drink my cordials like I drink my coffee, just straight without any sugar, milk. All right, the analogy's done. You understand. I drink a lot of cordials and I drink a lot of coffee. But it's nice to have this social feature. I'm glad that it's finally out. Again, the only complaint, the most major complaint I have is that this shouldn't have taken until 7.21. We should have had this before. Honestly, Chaotic was really cool, but I think the community needed something more like this, something more social, something more casually approachable that gets you on your crafters, your gatherers, just doing things together with, you know, a more simpler goals in mind. I don't know. I think it should have come out earlier, but it's here, and I am thus far enjoying it. But yeah, that's going to be a wrap on my Cosmic Exploration first impression. Let's call it what it is, ramble/rant, whatever it is. I just wanted to talk about it for like half an hour and then get a video out to you guys. So here it is. We made it. Be sure to like and subscribe and stay tuned. I don't know if I'll do more Cosmic Exploration videos just because it's not really my forte, but if I feel compelled, maybe I will. We'll see. But anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. And until then, take care.